Dad, don't come, okay? It's better if you stay and water the plants. We don't want you to ruin the trip. My name is Ernest Miller. I'm 75, and I've been a working man my whole life, a carpenter by trade, raised on the smell of wood and sawdust, used to measuring by eye and driving a nail with one clean strike. I raised my daughter with the strength of these hands and the patience of a man who knows you wait for the wood to settle before you lay on the varnish. I gave her a roof, food, school, and more than once, my rest. I never expected payment, but I did expect respect. That Friday she showed up with a quick smile, the kind that feels more like paperwork than a hug. We're heading to the beach for 3 days, Dad, to unplug. She left me the keys and a list taped to the fridge. Open the windows in the morning, water the bougainvillea at dusk, check the gas at night. Not a single invitation, not a come with us. Only responsibilities like I was part of the house inventory. I watched them pull out with the car packed, laughter and loud music spilling out. She sat up front next to her husband, and in the back was his dad in a brand new sun hat and sunglasses, showing off like he owned the vacation. I stood in the doorway, hat in hand, staring as the road dust swallowed their taillights. It wasn't the beach that hurt. I was never much for sand or surf. It was the way of it, the nerve of telling me it was better if I stayed behind. Like I was a nuisance who could babysit potted plants while they posed for pictures. That night, the house felt bigger and colder. I flipped on the shop light and started sanding an old chair. Not because it needed it, but because the sound and smell of wood bring me a little peace. Between strokes, I thought about everything I'd done for her. The loan for her first house, the help when he was out of work, the bills I paid quietly so they wouldn't be embarrassed. And still, for their first big trip, I was left out. While I watered the plants, I repeated the line she'd thrown at me. Better if you stay and water the plants. Like that's all I was. A caretaker, not a father, not a man with stories, not someone who also deserved a seat in that car. I sat in the living room with my ledger notebook. I've always written everything down. Expenses, loans, payments, dates. I also had the bank folders. I'm the primary on the credit cards they use, on the emergency fund I opened years ago in my daughter's name, and on an insurance policy that could cover any trouble. I did it out of love, without asking for anything, but it hit me that what I got in return was this spot of silent servant. I slept little, not from sadness, but from a thought that wouldn't let go. I haven't set boundaries, and when you don't set boundaries, other people decide where you end, and they begin. Saturday morning I made coffee and sat by the window. I watched people head to the farmer's market. And there I was, with that notebook in front of me, realizing I had more in my hands than it looked like. I'm not talking about money, I'm talking about control. And that control, up to now, I'd only used to help. I picked up the phone and called the local bank branch. I asked them to freeze every card I was responsible for. For security, I said, and it was. Security for me. I also shut down access to the emergency account. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't give explanations. It was quick. But in my chest, I felt one door close and another open. The rest of the day was quiet. I went to the market, said hello to folks I knew, came back with cinnamon rolls and fruit. I watered the plants like nothing had changed, even though I knew something had. Me? Toward evening, my phone rang. I answered. Dad, what did you do? We're at the grocery store, and the card's not going through. We tried the other one, and that one's dead too. Did you block them? My daughter's voice had that mix of anger and fear. Behind her I heard her husband, annoyed, and his father muttering something about what an irresponsible mess this was. I didn't say much. When you get back, we'll talk, honey. And I hung up. I wasn't picking a fight. I wasn't explaining anything. Sometimes the best answer is the one you don't give over the phone. That night, I slept better than I had in years. No dreams of blame. No mental courtroom. I went to bed certain that for the first time in a long time, I'd acted for me. But I knew it wasn't over. The real settling of accounts hadn't started yet. Sunday dawned easy. Cool air slipped through the window, and the coffee in the kitchen filled the house with a smell that's always meant calm to me. Outside, the bougainvillea leaned into the sun, and the quiet felt almost comfortable. Strange, but for the first time in a long while, I didn't have that anxious itch to be on call for other people's needs. I set the ledger on the table and left it open to a blank page. I didn't need to write a thing. Everything important was already done. But seeing it there reminded me I was still in charge of my decisions. Close to noon, the phone rang again. This time, I didn't pick up right away. I let it buzz, let the ring go twice, and on the third try, I answered. "Dad, please unlock the cards. We can't keep going like this. We don't have enough cash. The hotel wants to charge us now, and—" Her voice was less heated than the day before, but no less demanding. It wasn't groceries anymore, it was the stay itself. I went quiet for a few seconds, let the silence do a little work. "Sweetheart, I'm not fixing that from here. When you get back, we'll talk. You're blowing this out of proportion. It was just a few days. I don't get why you're making a thing out of this. You didn't get why what you said before. You left hurt me." She didn't yell, but she did push out a heavy sigh. The sigh of someone who thinks they're not in the wrong and that everything else is just oversensitivity. "Dad, I didn't mean to offend you. You don't have to yell to cut deep, honey. Sometimes the softest lines hurt the most." She went quiet. I could picture her in some hotel corner, trying to keep her husband from hearing the whole thing, hoping I'd cave. "Look, if you unlock them today, I promise when we're back we'll talk it through." "No, honey, we'll talk it through anyway, but with the card still frozen." I hung up before she could keep pressing. Not because I was out of patience, but because I knew any extra word would be twisted to steer the conversation. I spent the afternoon in the yard, organizing tools in the shop. I found old pieces hinges that still had life, straight nails that never bent, boards already cut that might become something new. Woods like that, what looks useless today can be the base of tomorrow's good work. At dusk a text came. Not from her, but from an unknown number. I opened it. "This is Sam, Jason's father. I think this has gone too far. You're putting your daughter and your son-in-law in a humiliating spot. I didn't expect this from you. I read it without hurry and deleted it. I wasn't getting into it with someone who, not long ago, treated me like I was invisible." That night over dinner, I remembered all the times I'd done things I didn't want to, just to keep peace with them. The trip for their wedding, paying for everyone's rooms because they were short, the loan to furnish their place while I slept on a creaky old bed, always putting my comfort last. And this was the result. I was a safety net, never the guest of honor. Monday the phone rang early. I answered without saying my name. "Dad? We talked to the bank, and they say only you can unlock. What are we getting out of this? We're getting you to learn I'm not an endless resource." "I can't believe you're saying that. You've always helped us." "Exactly. Always. And that made you think there was no limit. No insults, just a long silence." Finally she said, "When we get back, I don't know if we can go on like before." "I don't know if I want to go on like before either, honey." I hung up, not to hurt her, but because it was true. I took a walk through the neighborhood. I waved to neighbors, bought some bread, and stopped by church to light a candle. Not for payback or anything like that, just for clarity. So my words wouldn't turn into stones, but into wood that builds something new. On the way back, I saw my house from across the street and thought about everything those walls had seen. Laughter, arguments, parties, long quiet. I always believed that if I had a solid place, my family would too. But I was learning it's not like that. A roof doesn't hold people together. Decisions do. The afternoon passed with no calls. I figured they were finding another way to pay. Maybe borrowing from someone else. And though a part of me wanted to know how they'd fix it, I chose not to ask. Learning not to dive into everyone else's problems is also an act of self-respect. When night fell, I sat in the metal chair out back, looking up. I thought of my daughter as a kid, running through boards and sawdust, asking me to build her a dollhouse. I remembered how we painted it together, how she thanked me with a long hug. And I wondered when those hugs turned into to-do lists. I don't have all the answers, but I know this respect isn't begged for. And I was finally, though late, putting it at the center. I put the phone in a drawer, turned off the lights, and went to bed. The quiet didn't weigh on me anymore. I was starting to like it. What a shame you put us through, Dad. Was it necessary to humiliate us like that? That was the first thing my daughter said when she opened the door, sand still clinging to her calves and sunglasses stamped across her forehead. Behind her came her husband and his dad, smelling like sunscreen and half-rinsed anger. I was at the dining table, a cold cup of coffee by my ledger. I didn't spring up or raise my voice, none of that. I just lifted my eyes, locked them on hers, and waited for the whirlwind to die down. "Close the door, sweetheart," I said. "We talk with respect in this house." She pressed her lips. She wasn't here to talk. She was here for me to undo what I'd done. Her husband, Jason, jumped in with the confidence of a man who thinks being mad makes him right. "Look, Mr. Miller, it wasn't that serious. It was just 3 days. You could have waited. Blocking the card left us hanging and your bank doesn't even pick up on Sundays. Don't you think about anybody else?" I listened all the way through. I silently thanked the years I'd spent measuring before cutting. You learn that if you rush the saw, you ruin the board. "I think about everyone, son," I said. "That's why I made the call, because I'd gone a long time without thinking about me." His dad, Sam, tried to step in like a judge. "I texted you, Mr. Miller, and you didn't even respond. You'd expect more from a man your age." I looked at him calmly, the way you look at a crooked nail that can't be straightened. "And I'd expect," I said, "that if you don't live here, you don't butt into what a father and daughter have to discuss." He went quiet, hurt pride, but quiet. My daughter dropped her purse on a chair and, finally, without an audience, let the first truth fall. "We still owe the hotel, Dad. I had to ask a friend to transfer me money. It was embarrassing." Her voice wasn't angry anymore. It was scared. There was the little girl I carried when she scraped her knee. I sighed softly. The embarrassment didn't come from a card, honey. It came from thinking you have the right to park your father as a plant sitter when the right thing is to invite him, or, at the very least, respect him. Ha! She sat across from me. Jason paced the room, nervous. "Okay, find solutions," he said. "Unfreeze them. We'll pay the hotel and it won't happen again." I shook my head slowly. "No, son. This isn't a one-click fix. From today on, there are no more cards in my name. That door's closed, and what was charged without asking will be paid back. No speeches." I paused just long enough for my words to do their own sanding. "And one more thing. I need my spare key back. Keys aren't for coming and going without a heads up. They're for caretaking, not convenience." My daughter's eyes went wide, offended. "You're taking our key too?" I nodded. "I'm setting my house in order. That's different. And setting my house in order means setting my place in your lives." She reached into her pocket and set a spare on the table. "There it is." "Happy now?" I didn't answer with sarcasm. I just slid it into the same drawer where I keep offcuts I know will be useful someday. Jason tried to claw his way back on pride. With all due respect, Mr. Miller, you've benefited from us too. How many times have we done errands for you? How many times have we driven you to the doctor? I nodded. Thank you for the times you've helped. I've always thanked you. The difference is, I never made it a condition for being close. You, on the other hand, turned it into a deal. We do, and you pay. That's over. Thick silence. Sam tugged at his linen shirt, looking for air. I stood not to tower, but so my words wouldn't stay seated and went to the sideboard. I took out a manila envelope and set it on the table. Here are the last 12 months of statements, I said softly. Let's not play dumb. Every charge that isn't mine and that you made without telling me, write it on this sheet. No theatrics. Then we'll set a plan to pay it back. I won't drown you, but I'm not a bottomless well. My daughter lowered her eyes. Jason tried to read and cleared his throat. He knew the truth didn't have room for opinions. Are you really going to do this, Dad? She was trembling. I'm really going to set boundaries, honey, I said. Not to punish you, but so this changes. She tucked her hand back and took a long breath. Okay, tell us where to start. Her tone surprised me, more tired than defiant. I handed her a pen. Start with honesty. Write it all down. I'll get water. I went to the kitchen and turned on the tap. Let it run until it was cold. While I filled the glass, my eyes fell on the key I'd taken from the drawer the night before. Not a door key. An old shop key, the one that opens the cabinet where I keep the big documents. Deeds, policies, the house plan with my measurements, my unfinished will. I rubbed it with my thumb. It wasn't the moment to talk about that, but I knew that cabinet would open soon. Back at the table, they'd filled several lines. Groceries, a department store, app subscriptions, a pair of plane tickets I didn't recognize. Those were for a trip to Myrtle Beach in May, Jason said, not meeting my eyes. We were going to pay you back later, but later never came, I finished. No matter, it's here now, and now we settle it. I took the envelope and breathed in. It smelled like paper, numbers, and choices that don't get kicked down the road anymore. Then Sam, maybe feeling cornered, dropped what he'd been holding. I don't get the drama, Mr. Miller. You can't take anything with you when you die. Let them live. I surprised myself with how calm I stayed. You're right about one thing. None of us takes anything, I said. That's why I want to leave something better than money. Order, respect, and a daughter who knows how to set her own boundaries, not just inherit them. He flushed, muttered something, and slipped into the hallway with his phone. Probably to talk trash about me to someone. I didn't care. We kept going through the charges. No shouting. There were pauses, hard swallows, a couple of "I'm sorry." My daughter pushed out like they weighed 6 pounds. I didn't collect them as trophies. I'm not trying to win against them. I'm trying to square up the door so it doesn't scrape the frame every time we open it. When we finished, I said, tomorrow at 10, I have an appointment at the bank. I'm putting everything the way it should be. I'll cover my expenses. You cover yours. If you need help, you ask in advance and with reasons. And if I can, I'll see. But the auto-pay life is over. My daughter nodded. Jason did too, jaw tight. Want us to go with you? She asked softer. No, I'll walk this stretch myself. They stood to leave. At the door, my daughter paused. She hugged me without words brief, like a person unsure if they deserve the whole hug. Thanks for this. And I'm sorry. I touched her shoulder. Learn from this, honey. I'm learning too. I closed the door and held the knob a moment. The house breathed with me. I went to the shop, took the old key and carried it to the document cabinet. I slid it in and turned it slow. Inside, the deed envelope sat where it always had. I lifted it carefully, like a board you know can still be a table. I didn't open anything. It wasn't time. But I set the envelope on the dining table where it was plain to see. Sometimes you don't have to say it. You just put it where life can see it, so you remember you've got tools too, and you're ready to use them if you have to. Tuesday came in under a grey sky, the kind that hints at rain, but never follows through. I dressed early clean shirt, pressed pants, polished shoes. Not because it was a special occasion, but because when you put things in order, you show up with dignity. I poured strong coffee and sat across from the deed envelope I'd left out the night before. I didn't open it. I just looked at it. A quiet reminder that what's mine stays mine until I say otherwise. At 9:30, I headed to the bank. Shh. I walked easy, nodding to neighbors hurrying to work. At the door, I ran into Martha, the teller who's helped me for years. "Morning, Mr. Miller. Everything okay?" I nodded. "Today I'm putting things the way they're supposed to be, Martha. No questions needed. People who really know you can tell when not to pry." In the manager's office, we went through every account. I removed every authorized user in my daughter's and Jason's names. I shut down access to the emergency fund I'd opened for just in case. I transferred my savings to a new account mine alone. I didn't do it in anger. I did it like sweeping the house, clearing what doesn't belong, so there's room for what does. Before I left, I asked for a printout of the past year's transactions. The manager gave me a curious look, but didn't ask a thing. I folded the papers and slid them into the same envelope that held the deeds. Out on the sidewalk, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: lightness. On the way home, I stopped at the hardware store and bought a new lock for the shop gate. Not because I expected anyone to sneak in, but because I realized, same as with the accounts, my spaces needed clear lines too. When I got back, my daughter was sitting on the curb waiting. Her hair was pulled back, her eyes puffy, maybe from no sleep, maybe from crying. She stood as soon as she saw me. "Dad, can we talk a minute?" I nodded and opened the door. She came in quiet, like she was stepping into a place that wasn't quite hers anymore. We sat at the table. Her eyes flicked to the deed envelope like it was a threat. "Are you going to sell the house?" she asked, voice low. I didn't answer right away. I took a breath. "I built this house with my hands, honey. Every wall, every piece of furniture, every door is in my name and will stay that way as long as I choose. I'm not selling, for now." She went still. "I got scared when I saw that envelope there. I thought you'd already decided." I cut in gently. "I put it there so you'd remember something. What's mine doesn't belong to anyone else until I say so. That includes my respect and my time." She dropped her gaze. "Dad, I know what we said before we left was wrong. I didn't think it would hurt you like that." I listened, but I didn't let it slide. "It's not just what you said, honey. It's what you've been doing for years without noticing. And that's on me too, because I allowed it." She bit her lip the way she did as a kid when she knew she'd messed up. "I don't want you to think we only come to you for money." I cut in again, not harsh but firm. "I don't need you to tell me what you don't want me to think. I need you to show me, with actions, that it isn't so." We sat in a long, not uncomfortable quiet. Outside, a drizzle started, tapping the glass with a soft, calming sound. "What do you want me to do, Dad?" "Start by understanding I'm not an ATM or a hired hand. I'm your father. If you ever truly need my help, I'll give it, but not as an obligation, as a decision." She looked at me a long time and nodded slowly. "Okay, I get it." I didn't answer with a "glad to hear it." And I didn't rush a hug. Trust isn't rebuilt in a day. Same way, a bad chair isn't fixed with one nail. Before she left, she looked at the envelope again. "Can I ask you something?" I nodded. "If you ever decide to do something with this house, will you tell me first?" I let a faint smile show. "That depends on how you treat me from here on out, honey. Inheritance doesn't come just from blood. It's earned with respect." I walked her to the door. She went to her car without looking back. I stood there a while, watching the drizzle soak the street. I came in, shut the gate, and carried the deed envelope to the shop. I locked it in the cabinet with the old tools and good lumber. It wasn't time to use it, but the day it was, I knew I wouldn't hesitate. That afternoon, I sat on the porch with a hot coffee and watched the sky clear by degrees. I felt no hate, no grudge. What I felt was getting my place back in my own life. And that, at my age, is worth more than any bank account. Thursday morning, I was sanding an old board in the shop when I heard hard knocks at the door. Not the bell-impatient knuckles. I wiped my hands on my apron and opened up. There was Jason, alone, in a shirt that couldn't hide the sweat down his back. His smile was fake, the kind you see on someone trying to sell you something they don't believe in. "Mr. Miller, can we talk a minute?" "Come in," I said, and led him to the dining room. The deed envelope wasn't sitting out anymore, but his eyes still searched, sniffing around, like there had to be meat in an empty kitchen. He sat, uneasy, and dove right in. "Look, the trip is past tense now. No point dragging this out. We need you to reopen the accounts, at least the cards. Not for luxuries, just day-to-day stuff. You know life's expensive." I planted my elbows on the table and looked straight at him. "Jason, you've got two incomes. You're not destitute. You spend before you have and expect me to plug the gap. That's not my job. But you've always helped us. Yes, and that's how we got here. You confused help with dependence." He shifted in his chair. "I don't mean this the wrong way, but what are you going to do with all that money sitting there? In the end, it'll all be for my wife. I mean, for us." Heat rose in my neck, but I kept it down. "You're mistaken, son. Nothing is in anyone's by default. Things are passed on with respect while a man's alive, or they're distributed as he decides. And I'm still very much alive, in case you missed it." He went quiet, swallowing hard, tried to regroup. "Fine. Forget inheritance. Let's be practical. Just unlock things for a while, until we get our feet under us." "No, Jason. That 'while' never shows up." Long silence. He drummed his fingers, staring at the table. Then he let out a line that gave the game away. "What if I put your name on a business I'm starting? You invest, we run it. We all win." That's when I knew he wasn't here for reconciliation. He was here for a deal. And the deal was me. I leaned back, slow. "Jason, I built this house with my own hands. I learned that if one nail is set wrong, the whole structure pays for it. What you're pitching has loose nails from the start." "Loose nails how?" he bristled. "Simple. It's not a business, it's a bet. With my money. And I don't bet what took me a lifetime to earn." He sat up straight. "So you don't trust me. I trust you for some things, Jason. Not for handling my money." His face changed. The forced smile slid off. There it was, the real look. Annoyance mixed with disbelief. "I don't get why you're so closed off. You're going to leave this world without enjoying what you have. And I don't get why you're so focused on what I do with what's mine." There was an awkward pause. He gathered his papers, jerking them around. "I just wanted to help, but I see we can't talk here. We can talk, Jason. What we can't do is push." He stood, opened the door, and walked out without a goodbye. I heard the engine turn over and fade. I stood there, looking at the ring a coffee cup had left on the table. I wasn't angry. I was confirmed. That man didn't see a father-in-law. He saw a missed business opportunity. Mid-afternoon, my daughter called. Jason told me you said no. Why, Dad? Because it wasn't an investment, honey. It was a risk, and I'm not putting my piece on anyone's roulette wheel. But he's trying. No, he's trying to lock in a future with my money, not his work. I won't allow that. Silence on the other end. I worry you're acting out of anger. No, honey. I'm acting out of respect. Respect for myself. Took me too long to get it back. We hung up without arguing, but her tone told me she was uneasy. Not because she didn't understand, because accepting what I said meant looking straight at things she didn't want to see. The next day, while I was cleaning the shop, attorney Mark Ellison called. Mr. Miller, the documents we discussed are ready. If you want, you can come review and sign whenever you decide. I went that afternoon. He showed me everything. A will update that let me change beneficiaries anytime. A revocable living trust to protect the house and the lot, and the option to sell immediately if I chose. Counselor, keep everything on file. I'm not moving anything today, but if I call, I need it executed without delay. Understood. When I stepped outside, the sky was heavy and smelled like a storm. I walked slow toward the town square, and while the wind ruffled my hair, I thought about what my friend Roger said a few days back. What you don't set in order while you're alive gets ordered by someone who doesn't respect you. I wasn't going to let that someone be Jason. That night at home, a short text arrived from my daughter. We need to talk. Both of us. I didn't set a time. I didn't confirm right away. I poured a coffee and drank it on the porch. I looked at the bougainvillea, thinking how a few weeks ago they were just plants I watered on assignment. And now they stood for something bigger, taking care of what's mine. I didn't know exactly what was coming next, but I knew this. The next time they sat at my table, they wouldn't find an old man ready to be swayed. They'd find a man with the deeds, the control, and the last word. And I was ready to use all three if needed. Thursday, right after lunch, the doorbell rang. Not impatient knocking, not an engine idling. It was my daughter. And behind her, like an unavoidable shadow, came Jason. They came in with few words, but the tension hung off their shoulders like weight. Dad? We want to talk, the three of us. No yelling, no temper, she said, giving Jason a sideways look that told him to keep it together. I motioned to the dining table. I poured coffee for everyone, though we all knew that wasn't what they came for. Okay, we're here. What do you want to say? I asked, hands on the table. My daughter started. Dad, I know things have been tight since the trip. I'm not going to justify what we said or did, but I don't want you thinking everything we ask for is about money. Then why keep pushing about money? I asked, level. She looked at Jason, handing him the floor. He cleared his throat and went into his speech. Look, Mr. Miller, life's tough out there. Yeah, we messed up assuming you'd always be there to cover us, but we're not here to fight. We want middle ground. What kind of middle ground? I crossed my arms. Jason looked off to the side, measuring how to drop what was next. Think of it this way. You don't trust us with access now, fine, but you could at least assure us that when you're gone, these properties go to my wife. That way, we can live with some peace, and you can too. The line hit me like a warped board crooked from the start. I fixed my eyes on him. Jason, you're not here looking for middle ground. You're here to lock down an inheritance while I'm alive. That's not it, he tried. It is. And let me be clear. Inheritances aren't demanded. They're earned. My daughter lowered her head. I hated seeing her like that, but I wasn't going to soften the truth. Dad, I don't want this to turn into a war. I just want to know you won't make big moves without telling me. Depends on the move, honey. Some things you announce, some things you just do. And that's that. Jason leaned back. I don't see why you're so guarded. In the end, it's all for family. That's what you think. And by family, you mean yourself. He took offense. I saw it in his eyes. I work. I pay my bills. I don't live off you. But you don't mind coming for my money when it suits you. The silence was thick. Only the wall clock kept time. My daughter took a deep breath. Dad, if you don't want us to insist anymore, just say so. It's more than not insisting. It's understanding I'm under no obligation to leave you anything. If I ever do, it'll be because it feels right, not because you demand it. They shifted in their chairs, uncomfortable. I knew the talk didn't satisfy them. I didn't care. What they wanted was certainty that someday they'd own what's mine today. I wasn't giving them that. I stood and went to the shop. I opened the cabinet and brought back the deed envelope. I set it on the table without a word. They looked at it like dynamite. Here are the papers for the house, the shop, and the lot. They're in my name and they'll stay that way. If that ever changes, it'll be because I decide it, not because you corner me. My daughter's voice had a trace of fear. Are you thinking of selling? I'm thinking of making sure that when I go, nothing lands in the wrong hands. Jason let out a nervous laugh. So you're actually considering leaving us nothing. I'm considering that things are earned. And so far, what I've seen from you is pressure to secure your future with my work. His face hardened. You think you know everything, Mr. Miller, but nothing. I know what I've lived and what I've built. And I know when someone sees a father and when someone sees a bank account. My daughter stood. Dad, we should go before this gets worse. Go on, the door's open. She gave me a quick hug without meeting my eyes. Jason barely nodded and walked out. I stood alone in the living room, the deed envelope still on the table. I didn't feel relief or sadness, something closer to resolve. That envelope was more than paper. It was the tool I'd use to set the final boundary if it came to it. That night I called Attorney Ellison. Counselor, I think we're going to sign sooner than we planned. Understood, Mr. Miller. Tell me when, and we'll do it. I hung up and looked out the window. Outside, the bougainvillea were in bloom. I remembered that weeks earlier I watered them as a favor. Now I tended them because they were mine, like everything I'd built. And I was ready to defend it, even if it meant my own daughter wouldn't inherit a single brick of this house. Friday rose under a clear sky, like nothing could stain the day. But I already knew the clarity outside matched the one inside. Time to move the pieces. I got up before the sun hit the patio, made coffee and ate without rush. The deed envelope sat on the table next to the folder of documents Attorney Ellison hadn't pressed me to sign weeks earlier. I looked them over like a man checking a tool before using it. No anger left in me. No froth from old fights. Just a cool steadiness, the kind that doesn't shake when it's time to act. I packed everything in a leather bag and headed downtown. I walked slow, greeting folks as I passed, each step reminding me I was choosing for me. Not against anyone, though others might call it a blow. At the office, Ellison welcomed me with that calm of his that never hurries words. Morning, Mr. Miller. Ready to sign? Ready, Counselor. We opened the papers on his desk and went through every clause. It was all there. The revised will, the living trust that would place the house, the shop, and the lot under my full control with a beneficiary different from what my daughter and Jason took for granted. That beneficiary would be Roger, my old friend, the only one who spoke to me with the frankness I needed, and who never asked for anything but my company on a bench in the square. Ellison gave me one last look, making sure. You're certain? Completely. I signed each page with a steady hand, feeling the weight of years of work slide into a safe place. Not an act of revenge justice for myself. When it was all sealed and filed, he shook my hand. If you ever want to change anything, just say the word. It's locked down for now. Thank you. I walked out into the sun, sat on the same bench where I'd met Roger 100 times. I called him. It's done, friend, I said. Not sure if I should congratulate you or pour you a drink, Ernest. Both. Roger. Both. Back home, I set the bag in the shop and started putting tools in order. I like every tool in its place, same as my property now. While I was shelving an old hammer, I heard a car outside. I looked through the window. It was my daughter. She came alone, but with her brow tight, like she was carrying a storm. She walked in without hello. Dad, did you go to the attorney today? Yes, honey. Her stare told me someone had tipped her off. Jason says Roger called and hinted you made changes. I did more than hint. I did it. She went still, not sure if she didn't understand or understood too well. Are you telling me I'm not getting the house anymore? I'm telling you the house, the shop, and the lot aren't what they were. They're protected now so nobody can touch them without my say-so. You gave them to Roger? To him? I entrusted them, yes, because Roger never asked me for anything, and because I know he'll guard what I built. Her voice rose a notch. Your family should guard that, not a friend. And I'll ask you, when did you guard me, honey? When did you care about anything besides what I could provide? She went quiet, lips pressed. Dad, that isn't fair. No, honey. What isn't fair is years of treating me like an ATM. What isn't fair is leaving me out of your plans and using me as the helpful old man who waters plants. This is fair to me. If you don't get it now, maybe you will someday. She stepped back, like words could bruise. So you're just cutting me out? It isn't easy, honey. It hurts. But it hurts less than living the way I did. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. I didn't expect this from you. And I didn't expect you to see me as a means instead of an end. She turned, headed for the door, and before stepping out said, This is going to push us apart forever. That's up to you, honey. The door closed, and the house fell quiet again. I sat at the dining table, looked out at the bougainvillea, and felt a strange relief. Not happiness. Something deeper, like the feeling after finishing a hard job and knowing it's well done. Late afternoon, Roger came by. He brought a bag with sweet rolls and a bottle of bourbon. We sat on the porch and didn't need many words. I know it isn't easy, Ernest, but now you can sleep. I will, Roger, because what I built is in the hands of someone who values it, like I do. We toasted and watched the sky go orange. That night, before bed, I walked every corner of the house. I ran my hand over the walls, the door frames, the table I made myself. Everything had a story. And now I knew those stories wouldn't end up with someone who only saw dollar signs. I turned off the lights, lay down, and thought about my daughter's words. Maybe one day she'll understand. Maybe not. But I'd taken back something I should never have given up, the right to decide over my life and my work. At my age, that's worth more than any forced reconciliation. Sunday came with a different kind of quiet, the kind that wraps you instead of weighing you down. I opened the windows and let in the cool air. I made coffee and stood on the porch, watching the bougainvillea sway in the light breeze. The house was calm, and so was I. It had been years since I felt everything finally where it should be. I sat at the table, pulled out my ledger, and opened to a blank page. Not to jot down debts or expenses, but to write a few lines I knew someone might read one day. This isn't about money. It's about respect, and respect isn't bought or inherited. It's earned. I closed the notebook, slid it in the drawer, and poured another cup. Around 10, an unexpected call came. My daughter. I hesitated a second, then answered. Dad, can I stop by? Her voice was lower, like she was afraid I'd say no. Whenever you want, I said. Half an hour later, she knocked. She came without Jason, and that already said something. She stepped in slow, looking around like the house had changed. It's the same, but I don't know why it feels different, she said, almost to herself. Maybe because now I know it's truly mine, and not anybody's just because they think it is. I answered, not cruel, not softened either. Across from me, hands laced on the table. Dad, I've been thinking, and I know I've acted wrong plenty of times taking things for granted. I know the cards, the house, all of it came from what I did. I listened without interrupting. It wasn't time to pile on. I'm not going to ask you to undo what you did with the deeds. I know that's decided. I just don't want this to be the last thing that stands between us. I breathed in. No, honey, I don't want that either. But I can't pretend none of it happened. What I did was to protect what I've built and to give myself peace, not to punish you, even if it feels that way. It does feel that way, but I also get that you did it for you, and maybe one day I'll thank you for it. We sat in a long, not uncomfortable silence. It was the kind of quiet you get when you start accepting what you can't change. She looked me in the eye. Dad, can I keep coming over? Not for the house. For you. I nodded. Of course. The door's always open to you. Not to your interests. She gave me a small, sad smile and stood to hug me. This time it was different. Longer. Steadier. No rush. It didn't erase the past, but it told me maybe something had shifted. When she left, I stared at the closed door a while. Sometimes you lose one thing to gain something better. I'd lost the illusion that my daughter saw me only as her father, but I'd gained the right that if she sees me for real. No filters, no expectations. That afternoon, Roger dropped by with a bag of fresh rolls and a block of sharp cheddar. We sat in the shade, and I told him what happened. He listened, chewing slow, and when I finished, he said, "You did right, Ernest. At our age, you don't live with the fear that what you built with your hands winds up in the wrong hands." He wasn't telling me what I wanted to hear. He was telling me what I'd already proven true. As the sun dipped, I watched the horizon and thought about everything since the day my daughter told me it was better if I stayed and watered the plants. How that little line lit the fuse. I saw myself standing there with the hose, feeling like a useful ornament, and weeks later, watering those bougainvillea with the certainty they were mine, and nobody could decide for them but me. I realized I hadn't just taken back my property. I'd taken back my time, my peace, and my place in my own family. And that's priceless. At dusk, I flipped on the shop light and went back to a chair I'd been meaning to fix. As I sanded, I thought, life's a lot like that. Sometimes you've got to scrape down to bare wood, even if it costs you some shine, so you can lay on a new finish that'll last for years. Before bed, I sat and replayed every step that brought me here. I didn't regret a single one, freezing the cards, facing Jason, changing the deeds, and most of all, putting myself first after so many years of being last. Some folks will say I should have forgiven and left things as they were. That family comes before everything. But I've learned family isn't just blood. It's the people who respect you, who don't use you, who look after you when there's nothing in it for them. Sometimes that looks more like a friend named Roger than your own kin. Tomorrow will be an ordinary day. I'll buy bread, water the plants, drink coffee on the porch. Maybe my daughter will stop by. Maybe not. But what I do know is, whatever happens, I sleep easy now. And for a man my age, that's worth more than any inheritance I could leave. And if I go one day, I don't want to be remembered for what I did or didn't hand over in property. I want to be remembered for not letting anyone take my dignity, not even my own. Because in the end, The only thing we carry out is the peace of knowing we lived and decided it for ourselves. And that, son, is the most valuable inheritance you can leave. That's why I say it's never too late to take back your place. Sometimes life makes you draw lines that hurt, but they save you. Today, I can look in the mirror and know I didn't stay quiet, and I didn't let others write my story. So I'll ask you, if you were in my shoes, would you have done the same? Tell me in the comments, and tell me too. Where are you listening from? Maybe, like me, you've got something worth protecting.